I never thought my own child would throw that word at me like a stone. You're the failure of the family, Sarah hissed across the soft clatter of teacups on my cafe's opening day, loud enough for the line of customers to hear. Her husband, Daniel, laughed under his breath and said, "Close this place before you embarrass us." I stood so still my apron strings felt like they were holding me upright. What they didn't know, what even I didn't know then, was that one day Daniel would stand at this very counter, eyes red, asking me if there was any chance I was hiring. I am 69 years old, and my hands remember everything. They remember kneading dough by candlelight during power cuts, patting chubby baby legs so my granddaughter would sleep, and slipping folded bills into my daughter's purse when she was too proud to ask for help. These hands now smell of cinnamon and cardamom most mornings, a perfume that clings under my nails and follows me home like a warm, loyal dog. The cafe is small, just 12 tables, a blue door with a bell that tings cheerfully, and a pastry case I wiped so carefully that I could see my face in it. I named it the Blue Door because every closed door in my life seemed to be painted that same hopeful color. The door I stood behind when my husband died and the nurse said, "I'm sorry." The apartment door I rented after selling our big house. The bedroom door I closed when loneliness moved in like fog. Opening a cafe felt like painting one door open for once. On that first morning, sunlight spread itself across the tiled floor like a soft shawl. The espresso machine breathed in quiet hisses, and the first batch of cardamom buns, my husband's recipe, rose like small miracles. I placed a vase of marigolds on the counter because marigolds have a stubborn joy, and I wanted that here. "Bismillah," I whispered, then flipped the sign to open. The bell chimed. A nurse in scrubs ordered 2 chai lattes to go and smiled at the marigolds. A pair of students split a cinnamon roll, their heads bent together over one phone. A little boy pressed both hands to the pastry case and left foggy fingerprints I didn't rush to wipe away. Each small moment stitched itself into my skin, and for the first time in months, I felt like a person again, not an obligation being passed between texts. By 10 o'clock, the line reached the Blue Door. That was when Sarah came in. My daughter is 42 and walks like life is a hallway she has to get through quickly. She is always in charcoal colors, always 5 minutes late, 5 minutes late, always holding her phone as if it feeds her more than food does. Daniel followed behind her in a navy blazer, sunglasses hooked in the V of his sweater like he might be discovered for a photo shoot at any moment. They both looked around the cafe as if it were a guest that arrived overdressed. "Ma," Sarah said without a smile, "we were in the neighborhood." "In the neighborhood?" I said. "Your neighborhood is 20 minutes away." Daniel sniffed the air theatrically. "It's cute," he said. "Hobby cute." Something in me tightened, but I kept my voice sweet. "Try the cardamom buns," I offered. "Your father taught me that recipe." "There, Ma," Sarah cut in, lowering her voice but not her edge. "Are you sure this is wise? People our age retire. They don't play shop." I swallowed, feeling heat behind my eyes and refusing to let it spill. "People our age know how to stand on our own feet," I said. "Would you like coffee?" She exhaled through her nose, the sound she makes when the cleaner has folded towels the wrong way. "Fine. A black coffee. We can't stay." Daniel leaned on the counter. "You really should have discussed this with us," he said, tapping the glass where the lemon tarts sat like tiny suns. "If you had that kind of money lying around, we could have put it into something real. My friend's venture just closed a seed round. We'd have doubled it by now." I thought about the gold bangles I sold to help with their condo down payment. The babysitting I did, the weekends I cooked, the emergency dentist bill I paid when their insurer messed up. I thought about every time I smiled and said, "Of course," because being a mother sometimes meant bending until you learned which angles would not break you. I set their coffees down gently, saucer first, cup second, the way you place a newborn in a crib. "This is real," I said. "Taste and see." They didn't. They walked out without touching the cups, Sarah's last words slicing clean. You're the failure of the family if you think this is going to work. All the air left my lungs. The bell on the blue door jingled like it hadn't heard. Behind me, the espresso machine sighed, and from somewhere in the line a voice said, "Don't mind them, Auntie. 2 samosas, please." I nodded before my throat could find words. My hands moved on their own, pouring, slicing, wrapping, while inside me the word failure echoed like a shout in an empty church. By noon we'd sold out of buns. My friend Layla arrived after her shift at the clinic and squeezed my shoulder with her warm nurse's hands. "Full house," she said. She sniffed the air and closed her eyes as if praying. "Cardamom and victory." I laughed, and the laughter shook something loose. "They hated it," I said, and told her what Sarah and Daniel had said. Layla listened with her whole face. "That is a rare skill. You've bankrolled them for years," she said when I finished. "You gave them your time, your money, your peace. At some point, you're allowed to invest in yourself." "I know," I said. "But hearing it from your own child hurts like stepping on a hidden nail," Layla said. "But pain is also feedback. It says, 'Don't step there again.'" She glanced around the cafe and smiled. "Also, feedback says you're sold out of buns by noon." We restocked for the afternoon rush. I told myself that Sarah had been tired, stressed, thoughtless. I told myself that Daniel teases everyone because he doesn't know how to be gentle. Mothers are experts in stitching excuses out of thin air. But when the closing hour came and I turned the sign to closed, I found my phone humming. There was a message from Sarah. "Don't bring your cafe food to Ella's birthday tomorrow. We're keeping things simple and just family. Daniel doesn't want to mix things. Just family." I stared at those 2 words until they blurred. In the living room of my small apartment, the evening light caught on the framed photo of Ella on my bookshelf, 2 years old, cheeks like apples, icing on her nose. In the photo, I am behind her with my hands lifted, ready to clap. That day I baked a cake shaped like a lion and waited for Sarah to look up at me with the old, soft gratitude I knew from when she was a girl, and I stitched ribbons into her braids. She never looked up. I picked up the present I had wrapped, tiny yellow shoes with daisies, and a small picture book about a rabbit who owns a bakery and never gives up. I pressed the package to my chest and sat down on the sofa. The apartment smelled faintly of dish soap and cinnamon. I listened to the quiet. It is a sound I have trained myself to treat like a friend. "Just family," I said aloud, to the postcard of my own mother smiling from decades ago. And what am I? The next morning I went to the cafe early and baked too many buns. Sometimes when love has nowhere to go, it turns into bread. The regulars came with their rhythms. Mr. Alvarez with his newspaper, the college girls with their laptop stickers, the bus driver who orders a chai and sits in his uniform like armor. A young couple shared a lemon tart and the girl wiped sugar from the boy's lip with her thumb. I let that image stay with me longer than I needed to. Near noon, Daniel came in alone. He wore the same navy blazer and a cologne that smelled like someone else's idea of a holiday. He leaned on the counter and rapped his knuckles twice, the way men do when they want to be served before the people waiting ahead of them. "Morning, Daniel," I said. "Chai." He smirked. "We're trying a new caterer for Ella's party," he said, ignoring my question. "An upscale thing. You know, branding. Presentation. No offense, but this," he gestured to the marigolds, the chalkboard menu with my careful handwriting, "isn't the vibe." "None taken," I lied. My pulse tapped in my ears. "What can I get you?" He leaned closer. "Actually, I had a thought. If you really want to help the family, there's a smarter move than this place. My friend's fund is short on a small bridge. 50,000. We could put your capital to work. Quick return." I stared at him. I don't have 50,000. He smiled like a man explaining to a slow student. Of course you do. You opened a shop. I sold things to do it, I said quietly. Things that mattered. This cafe is my return. Daniel's smile thinned. You're being stubborn, he said. This is why Sarah gets so frustrated with you. You make it hard to help you. A surge of heat rose to my face. Help me, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Please order or step aside. People are waiting. He drew back as if slapped. Keep your little hobby, he said, loud enough for the room to hear. Just don't cry when it collapses. After he left, Layla slid in through the blue door as if she had been listening from the street. Breathe, she said softly, steering me to the sink to wash my hands. Breathe, then boundaries. Boundaries feel like betrayal, I whispered. Boundaries feel like betrayal to the people who benefit from you not having any, she said. Listen, I know a woman, Farah. She's a lawyer, kind but sharp. Not because you've done something wrong. Because you need someone on your side who knows where the traps are. Traps like what? Like being pressured to sign something you shouldn't, Layla said, drying my hands and passing me the towel. Like being left off just family texts until they want money again. Like someone convincing you to put your name where their risk should be. The words landed like pebbles in a jar. I thought of all the documents I had signed over the years, trusting that my child would never point me toward something that would harm me. I thought of how quickly Sarah's face can change when she decides something is beneath her. I thought of Daniel's habit of reaching for my elbow to steer me where he wants me to go. In the quiet after closing, I pulled out my ledger. I don't trust only the computer. I like the weight of a book in my lap. I wrote down in blue ink every expense, every ingredient, every receipt number, as if listing things could anchor me to myself. When I finished, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Farah, whose number Layla texted with 3 heart emojis. The second was to Mr. Kareem, my late husband's old friend who worked as an auditor before retirement. He has a way of asking questions that turn hidden doors into visible ones. Of course I'll stop by tomorrow, he said. Bring your papers. And Syra, he is old enough to still use my full name. Do you have any documents you've signed for them in the past year? Anything with your name and their business? I don't think so, I said and then hesitated. Maybe the condo lease, years ago. Past year, he repeated gently. Look. I looked. At the bottom of a stack of catalogs, cups, sugar, napkins, was a white envelope from a bank I don't use. I had assumed it was a flyer. It was not. It was a statement. A credit account I didn't recognize. My name, my address. Charges from a place called Metro Equipment Supply. Espresso machines, refrigerator units, catering gear. My throat went cold. I reached for my reading glasses with hands that suddenly shook. On the second page, there was a signature. Mine. Except it wasn't. It was the shape of my name, copied perfectly from another life. I could tell by the way the loop on the S trembled, the way I used to sign when my hand was stiff from arthritis. A signature I had signed on a hospital permission form years ago, when I was scared and tired. Someone had lifted it and dropped it here, like a borrowed face. I stared until the letters blurred into black smudges on white. Inside my chest, hurt gave way to something heavier, something with edges, a quiet, gathering rage. I thought of Daniel's cologne and Sarah's charcoal clothes, and the phrase just family like a door slamming. I put the statement into a plastic sleeve. I took a photo of it. Then I placed both the photo and the paper inside my ledger, like careful stitches on a wound. When I finally crawled into bed that night, the apartment was very still. Through the window, the city ticked and hummed. Somewhere a siren, somewhere laughter. I lay on my side and looked at the dark shape of my bookshelf. The photo of Ella with icing on her nose glowed faintly in the light from the street. You are not a failure, I told the ceiling. You are not a wallet. You are not a chair to be sat on. My phone vibrated once on the nightstand. A photo came through on the family thread. Ella in a party dress, candles blazing, Daniel's hand steadying Sarah's phone for the perfect angle. No invitation to stop by. No, we missed you. Just the picture, floating on a silence that said more than words. I turned the phone face down and closed my eyes. In the dark behind my eyelids, I saw the blue door of my café. I saw the marigolds. I saw my hands, steadying a cup, holding a pen, turning a key. In the morning, I would meet Farah. In the morning, I would tell Mr. Kareem everything. In the morning, I would begin the slow, careful work of learning what had been taken and how to take myself back. I am 69 years old. My hands remember everything. Tomorrow, they will remember how to fight. Morning light poured through my curtains in thin gold ribbons. It was the kind of light that usually made me feel comforted, like the world was giving me a gentle nudge to rise and face the day. But that morning, after the shock of discovering the forged signature on that bank statement, the light felt sharp, almost accusing. I rose slowly, my knees aching, and moved through the apartment with the ritual of someone who has lived alone long enough to know the small details matter. I boiled water for tea, set out a saucer with 2 Marie biscuits, and placed my ledger on the table like a companion. The envelope with the false signature sat on top, a ghost in plain sight. I whispered to myself as I poured the tea. Steady now. We'll walk through this one step at a time. That is something my late husband used to say whenever a problem arose. One step at a time, Syra. At 10 sharp, Mr. Kareem arrived, punctual as always. His back is slightly stooped now, but his eyes are as sharp as the days when he used to balance company accounts to the last decimal. He hugged me lightly and sniffed the air. Your home still smells of cardamom, he said. I smiled faintly. That smell has kept me upright. I showed him the envelope. He adjusted his glasses and flipped through the pages carefully. His brow tightened. This isn't just casual borrowing, he said. This is fraud, plain and simple. And if your name is attached, you're liable unless you fight it. The word fraud rang in my ears like a bell. Fraud. My own daughter and her husband had dipped their hands into my identity, like it was a jar of sugar they could use whenever they pleased. Do you think Sarah knew? I whispered. Or is this Daniel's doing? Mr. Kareem closed the file gently, looking at me with compassion. Sometimes love blinds us to who holds the pen. But from what I've seen, he has the hunger for it. She has the silence. His words landed heavy. I could almost see it, Daniel persuading her, whispering, it's just paperwork. Your mother won't even notice. And Sarah, my once sweet girl, standing by, letting it happen. By afternoon, I was sitting across from Farah, the lawyer Layla had recommended. She was in her late 30s, with kind eyes but a voice sharp enough to slice excuses in half. First, she said, tapping her pen, we secure your accounts. Freeze anything linked to this fraudulent signature. Then, we gather proof, times, dates, witnesses. Do you have receipts of when you sold your jewelry for the café? Yes, I said, pulling out the folded slips. I had kept them tucked between the pages of my recipe book, as if proof of sacrifice deserved to be held with family recipes. Good, she said. Keep every scrap of paper. Betrayal often hides in the fine print. Her words made me tremble, but not in fear. In recognition. All these years I had given so freely. Money, time, cooking, childcare, never asking for receipts because a mother does not invoice her children. And yet here I was, learning that maybe I should have. That evening, the café was quieter. A drizzle pattered outside, softening the world to a hush. I served tea to a couple of soaked workers, then sat at a corner table with my ledger. Every page felt like a map now, each line showing me where I had walked and where I had been robbed. Layla joined me after her shift, her hair damp from the rain. She saw the worry on my face and squeezed my hand. "What did Farah say?" "That I must fight," I said simply. "Not just for money. For myself." Layla smiled, her eyes kind but fierce. "Good. You've given them the skin off your back. It's time you stitched yourself whole again." Her words settled deep inside me, like seeds finding soil. The days that followed were a blur of discovery. Mr. Kareem helped me comb through every account, every receipt. We uncovered not just the forged loan, but small patterns. Utilities paid late because money had been siphoned, strange withdrawals I had thought were errors, even a subscription service for some luxury club Daniel belonged to, charged to my account once before being rerouted. Each revelation was a small cut, but together they bled me of illusions. I would sit at night with my photo albums, looking at Sarah as a girl, missing teeth, hair in pigtails, clutching her father's hand. My heart ached with a question that never found an answer. Where did that child go? Sometimes I whispered aloud to my husband's photo. Did we spoil her too much? Did I fail to teach her kindness? Or is this simply the greed she chose to feed? His eyes in the photo stayed calm, as if telling me, don't waste time on blame. Focus on repair. One evening, as I wiped down the cafe tables, Sarah herself appeared. She wore her charcoal coat, rain still dripping from the hem. Her expression was clipped, businesslike, as though this cafe were nothing more than a meeting room. "Ma," she said without sitting, "I heard you've been digging." Daniel said Kareem is sniffing through things. "You don't need to make this ugly." I set the rag down, forcing my hands to stay steady. "Ugly, Sarah, is signing your mother's name on things she never touched. Ugly is cutting me out of birthdays and then cutting into my savings. This," I gestured to the tidy tables, the marigolds, the warm smell of baked bread, "is not ugly. This is mine." Her lips tightened. "You don't understand business, Ma. Daniel's ventures need capital. Once they take off, you'll benefit too." "No," I said, my voice low but firm. "I don't need their flight if the ticket is bought with my wings." Her eyes flickered, but she said nothing. Instead, she pulled her phone from her pocket, typed a quick message, and slipped out as quickly as she came. I sank into a chair, my chest heavy. But underneath the heaviness, there was something new. Resolve. For the first time, I wasn't scrambling to excuse her behavior. I was standing in the truth, and though it hurt, it was solid ground. A week later, the cafe was busier than ever. Word had spread, not of my family drama, but of the cardamom buns, the saffron tea, the lemon tarts. Students came with sketchbooks, nurses with tired feet, retirees with stories to share. The cafe hummed with laughter and clinking cups, a small world where I was not invisible, not disposable, not a failure. That was when Daniel walked in again. But this time, his blazer was wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He didn't smirk. He didn't make a show. He simply walked up to the counter and, with a voice rough around the edges, said, "Syra, are you hiring?" I froze. The bell over the blue door jingled once more, as if punctuating the moment. The same man who had laughed at my cafe, who had called it a hobby, who had drained me dry with forged signatures, now stood before me asking for work. My hands remembered everything. They remembered holding Sarah as a baby. They remembered signing over checks. They remembered baking bread that smelled of sacrifice. And now, they remembered how to fold closed. I didn't answer right away. I looked at him long, letting the silence stretch until he shifted uncomfortably. Then I said, "Daniel, my cafe is built on honesty, respect, and hard work. You've shown me none of those. Why should I trust you with even washing dishes here?" His eyes darted to the line forming behind him. He lowered his voice. Please. Things have gone bad. The business collapsed. Investors want answers. I just need something steady. I held his gaze. So did I said quietly. And when I needed it, you gave me betrayal. For the first time since I had known him, Daniel had no reply. He turned and walked out, shoulders sagging. I exhaled, slow and deep. My customers went on ordering. The marigolds still glowed. The espresso machine hissed as if in applause. And I realized something. Power shifts quietly. Sometimes it doesn't need to roar. Sometimes it just needs to stand. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Today I said no. Today I did not fold. Today, I remembered I am not a failure. I am the keeper of the blue door, the owner of my own story. Tomorrow we fight further, not with anger, but with proof, with boundaries, with strength." And for the first time in months, I slept without waking in the dark to check my phone. The next morning, I walked into Farah's office with my ledger tucked under my arm and the forged bank statement sealed in plastic. My heart was thudding, but my steps were steady. Farah gestured for me to sit. "Tell me everything," she said. I laid out the papers like stones from a riverbed, receipts from selling my bangles, invoices for equipment I'd bought with my own hands, and finally, the statement with my stolen signature. Her eyes darkened as she examined it. "This isn't clumsy," she said. "This is calculated. Whoever copied your signature knew exactly what they were doing. And if payments stop, the bank will come after you first." Her words were heavy, but they gave shape to my fear. It was no longer a vague dread. It was a threat I could name. "What can I do?" I asked. "You fight back," Farah said firmly. "We'll report the forgery, freeze accounts, and build evidence. But I need more. Any documents you've signed for them, leases, loans, business deals, bring them here. We'll go line by line." That night, I spread everything across my small kitchen table. Faded folders, old agreements, even birthday cards stuffed with receipts. The fan hummed overhead, pushing papers like restless ghosts. I realized just how many times I had signed things for Sarah and Daniel without a second thought. "It's just a formality, Ma," Sarah would say, rushing me. And I, desperate to be useful, would sign. Tears stung my eyes as I looked at the stack. Was my love so blind it became their weapon? I thought of my husband again, his steady voice. "One step at a time, Syra." So I picked up a pen and began labeling each paper. Step 1. Step 2. Step 3. The next day, Kareem joined me at the café after closing. Together we sorted, highlighting dates, circling odd figures. He whistled low when he saw how deep it went. "They've been using you as a guarantor, Syra. Some of these contracts make you responsible for debt if they default." My stomach dropped. "So if their business collapses, you carry the burden," he finished grimly. I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling the betrayal like a physical weight. But then I looked around the cafe, the marigolds glowing on the counter, the chairs stacked neatly, the smell of bread still warm in the air. This was real. This was mine. "They will not take this from me," I said aloud. Kareem nodded. "Then we prepare. Evidence first, confrontation later. Remember, strength is in the details." That night, I sat in bed with my journal. I wrote only one line before closing it. "They mistook my silence for weakness. They are about to learn otherwise." I closed the book, turned off the lamp, and let the darkness hold me, not as a prison, but as a place where resolve quietly hardens into stone. Farah called me the following week. Her tone was calm, but her words carried a storm. "Syra, I've gone through the contracts. Some of them list you as a co-signer on Daniel's failed ventures. If creditors come knocking, you're on the hook for thousands." I gripped the phone tighter. My kitchen smelled of fresh bread cooling on the counter, but suddenly it all felt bitter. How could they do this to me? Their own mother? Farah's reply was steady. Because you trusted. And they counted on that trust. But now, we use the same paper they forged against them. That evening, Sarah came by the café, her voice tight. Ma, why are you digging into things? You're making Daniel look bad. Can't you just let it go? I wiped down the counter slowly, meeting her eyes. For once, I didn't shrink. No, Sarah. I can't let betrayal sit at my table anymore. Her lips parted, shocked. I had never spoken to her that way before. She turned and left without another word. I stood there, my rag damp in my hand, realizing something powerful. For the first time in years, I had chosen myself. The following morning, Farah joined me at the cafe before opening. She laid out the copies of forged documents across a corner table. Seeing my name repeated in ink I never wrote made my stomach twist. You're ready, she said gently. The next step is confronting them, not with anger, but with proof. Once they see the evidence, the power shifts. Later that evening, I called Sarah. My voice was calm. I need you and Daniel to come by tomorrow. We have something to discuss. She sighed heavily, as though I was the burden. Fine, Ma. But make it quick. When I hung up, I stood in the quiet of the cafe. The marigolds on the counter leaned toward the light, and I felt the same small courage rising in me. 4 years, I had given without asking, sacrificed without question, loved without boundaries. Tomorrow, I would sit across from my own blood and show them what they had done. I touched the blue door as I locked up for the night and whispered, "This time, I will not walk away." The next afternoon, I reserved the corner table in my cafe. The documents were spread neatly in a folder, my ledger beside them like a silent witness. My hands shook, not from fear but from the weight of years I had carried without question. Sarah and Daniel arrived together. Sarah kept her coat on, her arms folded. Daniel, as always, walked in with a smirk, though his eyes darted nervously around the room. "What is this about, Ma?" Sarah asked, already impatient. I gestured to the folder. "Sit." They did, reluctantly. I opened the file and slid the forged bank statement toward them. "Care to explain?" Daniel barely glanced at it. "It's business. Don't make a scene." "Business." I repeated, my voice sharp. "This is my name. My signature. My debt if you default. You stole from me." Sarah's face went pale. "Daniel," she began, but he cut her off. "Look, it was a temporary fix. You have no idea how much pressure I'm under." I leaned forward, my eyes on both of them. "No, Daniel. You have no idea what it feels like to be betrayed by your own child. I raised you, Sarah. I gave everything I had. And you stood by while he used me." Silence fell between us. For the first time, Daniel had no clever words, and Sarah had no defense. I straightened my back. "This ends now. The lawyer has everything. Either you come clean, or the law will make you." Their faces shifted, anger, shame, fear, but I didn't flinch. For once, the power was mine. For a long moment after my words, the only sound in the cafe was the steady hum of the espresso machine. I had expected shouting, excuses, maybe even threats. But instead, there was silence, the kind that makes the truth feel heavy in the air. Daniel was the first to break. He laughed dryly, but it wasn't the confident laugh he usually carried. "So what, you'll sue us? Drag your own family into court?" I didn't blink. "If I have to, yes." Sarah's eyes widened. "Ma, you wouldn't." I turned to her. "For years, I have cooked your meals, watched your child, given you my savings. I sold my bangles, my memories, to help you. And still you stood by while Daniel forged my name. You let me carry debts that weren't mine. If protecting myself means standing in court, then yes, I will. Her lips trembled, and for the first time in years, I saw not the sharp, dismissive woman she had become, but the little girl who once clung to my sorry when she was frightened. But pity could no longer guide me. Daniel slammed his hand on the table. You think anyone will believe you? You're an old woman. Half the time people don't even listen when you order coffee. I leaned closer, my voice like steel. That may have been true once, but not anymore. I have lawyers, witnesses, and proof. I may be old, but I am not weak. Remember that. The color drained from his face. For the first time, Daniel looked small. Sarah whispered, "Ma, please." But I raised a hand. No. I won't let guilt pull me back into silence. I love you, Sarah. I always will. But love does not mean letting you destroy me. I gathered the papers and stood. This is the last time I will ask politely. Either you both confess and settle what you've taken, or we let the law decide. Neither of them moved. They looked at me, stunned, as if seeing me for the first time. I walked to the counter, unlocked the blue door, and held it open. Leave. Daniel muttered under his breath but obeyed. Sarah hesitated, her eyes glossy with tears, before following him out. The bell jingled once, then silence returned. I closed the door gently, not with anger, but with resolve. I looked at the marigolds on the counter, their orange petals stubbornly bright, and I smiled. For years, I had been told I was nothing, a burden, a failure. But standing there in my café, with the proof of their betrayal and the strength of my own will, I finally understood. I was not a failure. I was a survivor. And I had just chosen myself. Weeks later, I sat in Farah's office as she slid the final documents across the desk. The investigation confirmed everything: the forged signature, the debts, the manipulation. Daniel was held accountable, and Sarah. She finally admitted what she had allowed to happen. The courts protected me, but more than that, I had protected myself. When I returned to my cafe that evening, the blue door chimed as regulars filed in. The smell of cinnamon and cardamom filled the air, laughter bounced off the walls, and marigolds glowed on the counter like small suns. I wiped my hands on my apron and looked around, at the life I had built with my own 2 hands. 4 years, I had been invisible in my own family. But here I was seen, respected, and valued. Sarah came once, weeks later, standing awkwardly at the door with Ella. My granddaughter ran to me, arms wide, and I bent down to hug her. Sarah whispered, "I'm sorry." I nodded, but inside I knew forgiveness would be slow. Because this was my truth now. I am not a failure. I am a woman who stood, who fought, and who chose herself. And my blue door will never close again.